This is the third video in the series for Microsoft Access 2013. In this video, I'm going to try to cover the three other aspects of Microsoft Access. We've talked about tables in the two videos in pretty good detail, and now I'm going to get to the ideas of query, forms, and reports. So this way, you'll have a pretty good idea of all the four elements, and then after that, I'll talk about relationship in the next video, and also we'll do some examples to bring in all the things together with a practical usage example. So I'm going to go ahead and open a file, and what I'm going to do is maybe I'll leave a link to this file, so if you wanted to follow along with me, you can download it and you can practice it on your computer. So I'm just going to go ahead and open my file, so I can use the open button and I can go to the computer and I can browse. Usually you'll see the last one listed here, so I've just labeled it contacts. I'll click it. So if you remember, in the previous video I had two tables, contacts and table sales. So I'll just use the table contacts as an example. I'll just double click on it, and I've deleted some of the other things from here, the fields that I didn't want to need. I just have first name, last name, telephone number, date of birth, country, city, and if I want I can double click here to add an image. So I'll just add one for now. Okay, so I'm going to close this table. It's always best to not have things open if you don't need it. Now what I want to do is I want to create a query. So the easiest way to do it is to go to the query wizard for now, and I'll click on the query wizard. Now it's always good to click on the table that you want the query for, so you don't have to choose it, because when I start the query wizard I have to choose what kind of a query do I want. For now we're just going to concern ourselves with the simple query. I'll click OK. Now it's asking me to choose which table. So if I wanted the other table, then I'll have to click here and then choose that. So you can create a query on any of the tables, and you can even create a query based on a query. So you can do that. So for now I just need table of contents, and so these are all the fields. Now for some reason the picture, the attachment, they show up like this. So instead of using the double arrow which will add all the fields, I'll just use the single arrow. So I'll say let's take contact ID, first name, middle name, last name, telephone number, date of birth, country, city, and the picture. I don't need the full name for now, which is fine. I'll click next. Now this is the name of the query, so for now I'll just say QRY, which is short for query, and just put 1 for now. We can modify it later, and I'll choose the modify option and I'll click finish. So this is what the query looks like. So here are all the different fields. So it's part of this table and these are the different fields from it. Now what can you do with the query? Query simply means search. I want to search for something, and it gets very powerful here as you start searching. So say for example I'll click in the criteria. So there is this line called criteria, and I'll click here in the city and I'll say Toronto. So I'm trying to say that find me all the records where the city is Toronto, and I'm going to use the run button to run the query. So when I run it, I only get the results Toronto. I can come back to the design view and I come back to the design of the query. So everything in Access has the front end, which is the actual results, and here the design view is the designing of the query. And I could do multiple. I could do 2 criteria. So I'm trying to type Canada and Toronto, and if I run, it will try to match both criteria, which in this case is the same. Now if I wanted, along with Toronto, I could put Atlanta. So I want to do a query for both the things. It puts the quotations for you down there. That's fine. And I can choose run. So now it gives me Atlanta and Toronto. I can come back to design view. Now if I close this query, I say yes to saving it. So there is that query 1. So if I double click on it, it will keep on running that query Toronto Atlanta. So I can save it, rename it something properly, so I'll know what this query will do. I'll come to design view, and I'm just going to remove this, and I'll show you some extra features of query, a few of them for now. So say if I want all the area code 905 in the telephone number starting with 905, so I put 905 and then the star asterisk symbol, which stands for the wildcard, and I'm going to use the run button. So now I get all the records which matches the area code 905. So I can come back to design view. Same way I can do with 416. Now if I wanted, I could do it with names also. I can just put L and then the star. So that means match the first character. After that, whatever it is, that's okay, and I can choose run. For some reason it didn't find anything. Alright, good. I made a mistake because you see by mistake I had the L here. So that will cause a problem because it's going to try to match both the criteria. So I'll come back here, L and then the star. Let's run. Hopefully it works this time. And there it is. All the L first name starting show up. So these are really handy things that you can use to create your searches. Now if I wanted in the country, I want to put what is known as a parameter query. So I'm going to put the bracket is the rectangle, the square type brackets, and I can put a question in there, and I can just say type a country, and I'll close the bracket. So you can type whatever you want inside those brackets. So you can put any wording that will give people enough indication. So now when I run the query, this prompt will come up, type a country. So you can type something properly, and then if I say USA, I'll get all the USA results. I'll come back to design view. Now if I run it again, it will ask me for the same question, and if I say Canada, I get all the Canada results. So I'm going to close this and say yes to saving it. And I'm going to rename this query, and I'll just say QRY by country. Now when I double click it, it will prompt me with that question. And we will look at the queries in a little bit more detail in the next further along videos. For now, I want to give you the basic idea so you will have a good understanding of the whole picture of Access. I'll just show you a few minor things in the query. So I'm going to right click here, and I can go to design view right away. And I can actually choose if I wanted to sort the query by a certain thing. So if I click in this first name, and I'll say sort this ascending, so it will put everything in an alphabetical order by first name. And if I wanted, I didn't want the picture, I can just say, you know what, I don't need the picture in this query. So I can remove the check mark in the show option. And now if I run the query, it will ask me that question. I'll type USA, I'll click OK. Now you see the names are listed in alphabetical order. And I can even save it if I want, and I can close this. So this is query. So now I want to show you what is known as form. A form is a way to nicely show your tables. So when I look at my table, I just see all these fields going sideways. So I can make a form where everything will be listed nicely in front of me. So let's understand it. And you have to realize that everything is dependent on the table pretty much. So whatever you do, you gotta have the table first, and then everything else is using the table to do things. I'll click on this table because I want to create a form for that. I go to create. Now if I want, I can just click on this form button, and you'll find that the form is created. And it is showing me in the layout view. So I'll just click here on the left hand corner on the top. So now this is my actual form. And I can see all the records here. I can go sideways. I can make changes. And if you see, the picture actually showed up here nicely. And there is another way of making a form. So I'm just going to close this, say no to saving it for now. You could say yes, where you get to choose more options. So if I go to create, I can use the form wizard. Now there's the table, and I'll choose the fields I want. So I'll just take all the fields that I need. If I don't need full name, I don't. I could have just used the double arrow that will add all the fields. So it's up to you how you want to do this. And I can click next. By default, the columnar is fine for now. Next, I can give it a name here. I can call it FRM contacts. So this is a form for the contacts table. So it's very important that you label them properly, and I can just go to the open rather than modify. I click finish. So here's my form. Now with query there is a design element, with table there is a design element. The form also has a design element. So if I click here on the drop down button, I can go to the design view, but before you do that, if you can just make changes in the layout view, I would recommend you go there, and then I'll also show you the design view. So let's go look at the layout view, and I'll just close this field for now. So the layout view is I can use to extend the things. If I wanted to make the field small or big, I can even click here and hold the shift key and click here, and I can drag them around. So you can resize the fields. You can hold multiple ones by holding the shift key and clicking it, and you can resize them. And in the design option, there are different things to do. And remember, this is where we design the actual form, and then when we are done, we actually flip over to the form view to start making changes. So I'll come back to layout view, and in the design I can use the themes to change the looks and the themes. There are different themes option, so now it looks different. I can click here and then double click on it, and I can call it whatever I want, and I can extend this column like this, and I can go to even in the format I should have the option to make it centered. I can even increase the font size. Now if I come to the front end, so there it looks like that. Now if I wanted to scroll across, I have to use these small buttons here. Next record, previous record, first record, and then this is for new record. So I would rather make some buttons here that will make it easy for me to navigate. And this is like an exam question in many cases. So I'll do this. I'll come to layout view, and I'm looking for a button. So I'll click on the button and say I'm going to make like a button here. And what kind of a button do I want? So I can say I want a button that says find next, or I want to say go to next record. So I click next. Now I can choose to have a picture like an arrow, or I can even choose it to have it like a text, and it's showing me the buttons here, what it will look like. And I can click next, and I can click finish, and I'll just put that button here. I'll click the button again, and I'll drop it here. Now say I wanted a button for new record, so there is a record operations. I can click new, next, and I can choose what I want. I'll just use the word add, and I'll add the word new. So I'll have a text in the button itself, and I'll click next and finish. Okay, so there it is, and I'll take this one and I'll drop it here, and say I want it to be form operation. I want to close the form, and there's also options to print, so you'll see all when you practice. Next, and I can say close form, next, finish, and there it is. So let's see what it looks like. So I'll come to the front end, and if I click this, you see it's changing records. I can make the other one going the other way, and I can close the form, say yes to saving it, and there is the form. Double click on it, and there it is. Add new. Now it brings me to a new record. Now whatever information I enter here will show up in the table. So just to see that, I'll just enter test do, and let's close it and see if it shows up there. I'll double click on the tables, and there it is, the last one, test and do. So I'll close this, double click here. So these buttons are really handy. Now you could do a lot of these things from the design view. The design view just has a different look to it. Now what I'm finding that I cannot move this around, so that's what I find, that sometimes when I'm doing certain things in the layout view, it's difficult to get to it. So I'm just going to delete these buttons and I'll do it in the design view, because I find that you have a much better control. So if I click here and I'll add a button here, so I can even draw it and I can make the same buttons. Go to next record. So now you see I can move the buttons wherever I want it. I'll add another one for previous record. So you see I can move it around nicely. For some reason when you do it in the layout view, it gets stacked together and sometimes you cannot unstack it easily. And I can add another one. Record operation, add a new record. I can also add for a delete record. Okay, and just look at it. So this is the buttons. Now sometimes you'll come across a question where they'll ask you to add a text box, which is this button here, or they'll ask you to add a label. Labels are just one box. Text box are like this, where you get two different sections. So you put a title here and then whatever they want to talk right here will go in there. You can delete that. Now there is an option to add what's known as a option group. You know, it's like sometimes you fill up a form and they'll say they'll have a section for sex and they'll say choose male or female, and you'll have a round button to add it. So there is a button called option group. Now before I do that, what I'll do is I'll add a new field in my table. So I'll go to the design view and I'll add a new field called sex, and I'll leave it anything. I won't add anything here, and I'll save it. I'll come to the right click on it and go to design view of my form, and up here I'll put the option group. So I'll click on the option group and then I'll make like a rectangle box and I'll type male, female as my two options. I click next. It's asking me what will be the default choice, and you can choose male or female. I'll click next, and it's going to put a value of 1 and 2, 1 for male and 2 for female. I'll click next, and it's asking me where do you want to save this information. It could save it just somewhere in the system, or I can say store it in the value in the field sex, because I created that. I'll click next. Now I can choose to have like check marks, or I can choose options, and I can make it look a certain way. Click next and finish, and I'll just double click on this top here, highlight it, and I'll type sex there. Let's see what it looks like. I'll come to the front end and you see there it is. So now you can choose one or the other. So as I'm choosing these information, they're getting entered in the table. So I'll just close it. I prefer to close it because sometimes otherwise you'll have to hit refresh. So just to see, let's see if I double click on the table, and you see the 1 and 2s are getting added up. And I might need to refresh just to say, so there it is. 1 is for male, 2 is for female. And close this. So this is known as the option group, and you can use it to set up different options that people can choose, the check marks, and you can store this information in your table even later on. We'll look at some more advanced features in the form a little bit later. For now, again, we'll just do the minimum. In the design, I can use the logo button to add a logo. So it's added it there. I can also, in the header and footer, so the logo buttons are in the header and footer, I can also add a date and time. So it will put a certain type of date and time in the bottom, in the footer part. In this case, it's put it in the header. and I can always move it down if I needed it. So I'll come here and then draw my footer down so I make some room, and I'll move this form up a little. I'll cut it, and let's see if I can paste it here. Right click and I can paste it there. I'll do the same thing with the other one, the time. Right click, cut it, and I'll put it in the paste. So if I had, and I'm just going to drag this. So if I had extended it and clicked here, and when I click on the date and time, it would have gone there. So let's see. So that's my form. I'll scroll down, and there's the time on the right, and the date. So that's gone in the footer. Come back to the design view. So those options are available to you right from there on the top. Now if I ever delete a field, so say for example I'll delete this field, and if I wanted to add it again, I can use this existing field option, and then I can just drag this down this way. Now I can adjust it. So you can always create a form from the form design and then you add the fields from it. So let me just show it to you quickly. I'll close this, say yes to it. I'll go to create form design, and then I can just add the existing fields, show all tables, table of contacts, and I can start dragging the fields. Now this way you'll have more control over its location and its width, and then you can arrange it as you want it. I'll close this. So we've looked at query, and now we looked at form. Now let's look at the last element, which is called report, because at the end of the day the management wants report, your managers want reports, so you'll be creating a lot of reports. Now the reports are based on the table, or you can create a report based on a query which will get you the results from your table. So let's look at a simple one first. Create a report for the whole table. So I go to create, and I can just click on the word report. Well, because I've already clicked on the table contacts, I click report, and there is the report, and I'm in the report layout. I can switch over the report view, and this is what the report looks like. I can close it. I'll say no to saving it for now because I prefer to go to create through the report wizard, because then I can choose. I want, say, contact ID, first name, middle name, last name. I've said, you know what, I don't need the middle name, and in fact I'll say I don't even want the first name. I'll just take the full name, and I'll take the sex, and then I want their telephone number, date of birth, country, and I think that's it. So I can choose what I want. I can click next, and here you don't need to worry about it right now. Click next. I can sort it by whatever. I can say sort it by full name, so we'll put things in alphabetical order. Click next. Now I can choose whether I want it portrait or landscape. If I had lots of columns, I can make it landscape. For now I'll just say portrait, and different layouts available. For now you can leave the defaults as they are, and I can click next, and now up here I'll give it a name, so I can say RPT contacts or report full contacts. I can modify, but let's preview the report, and I'll click finish. So you see, this is what the report looks like, and there are some issues here that I need to arrange. So to do that, I'll close the print preview, and I'll come to the layout view. You'll find it's easier to work in the layout view. And if I don't want this, because the sex is 1 and 2, so I can delete it. I can even click here and delete this. And now I can extend this. I'll click here and I can reduce this a little. Also this. So these are two different sections, because this is the column, each individual elements, and this is the heading for it. So you have to make changes to both of them. And I'll click on the date. I can expand it here. I'll click here and also expand this here so that the dates will become visible. can drag it inside. If I want to move it, I can hold the shift key, click on the bottom so that I drag it together. Hold the shift, click on the bottom so you can drag it together. So that's it to creating reports. Now I can double click here and change the title. If I want, I can extend it, and I can go to format and I can center it. In the design, I'll find again there are different looks available that show things in a different way. There are different color options available and also fonts options. So I can change the fonts as I want it. I can close this and I'll say yes to it. So there is my report. So every time I run this report, it will just give me an up-to-date contact list. So if I go and add more tomorrow and I run the report tomorrow, I'll get all the results. Now let's create another one based on that query by country that we created. So I'll go to create report wizard, and you see it's already chosen there, query by country, and I'll say, you know what, I don't need the contact ID, just give me the first name, I want the last name, telephone number, date of birth, and the country. And I'll click next, next. I can choose to sort it by first name. I'll click next. Again, I can choose portrait or landscape. I'll click next, and I'll just call it, instead of query by country, I'll call it RPT, report by country. I click finish. When I click finish, it runs the query, and that query is supposed to ask me the question, type a country. So if I type Canada, I'll click OK. So I get the Canada report only. Now again, I'll have to close this, and you can make the changes here again. So if I want, I can click here, hold the shift key. I don't need all the space for the telephone number. Click here, click here. So I'm holding the shift key and pressing it. And let's see, I don't need so much space for last name. And I'll click the report view. It will ask me the question again. If I type USA, I'll get the USA, and it looks much better. And you can go back and make certain more changes to it. In the coming up videos, I'll talk a little bit about how you can also do some kind of calculation here, but I'll just show you some basic ones. I'll come to design view or layout view, and say I wanted to count my records. How many records do I have? So I can just go to this totals, and I can say count records, and it will put number 4 there. And let's see the report. So there it is. It counts as 4. Now if I wanted, I could go to design view, and where it says count, and if I wanted, I can go to the design and I can put the label, and I can draw the label here, and I can just type number of records, and I just need to increase this a little. Yep. Let's run the query. So it says 5 Canada records and USA is 4. So I'll close this, say yes to saving it. Now every time I run this report by country, it will prompt me with that question. I answer it, and it will give me the result. So it says number of records are 4, and there's a whole bunch of calculations you can do. So this is it in this video. I wanted to finish up the most important elements, and then in the next video get into some more details with relationships, and also look at some examples of how you can use Access to solve some problems and creating your own database. Thank you for watching.